This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 198, where we're talking to you about Daredevil, Season 3, Episode 12, One Last Shot. Welcome back, fellow Defenders. It is I, one of your hosts, Chris Jones, where we're talking to you about Daredevil Season 3, Episode 12, One Last Shot. It's the penultimate episode. I am joined by the illustrious co-hosts for Defenders TV Podcast, the one and only Derek and John. Boys, introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Derek.
And hello, fellow Defenders. I am John.
We are nearly there. We're nearly at the end of Season 3, and it has been one crazy ride.
We have one last episode to go on Daredevil Season 3. And of course, to listen to all the back catalogue of Daredevil, please head on over, subscribe, leave a review over at defenderstvpodcast.com, where you can pick your podcast catcher of choice to listen to the dulcet tones of the three amigos. But with that, let us get into our spoilerific-filled review. Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Well, this episode was directed by Phil Abraham. He directed Royal Dragon, Defenders episode, and has directed loads of episodes of Daredevil before. Has done 2 episodes per season of the last 2 seasons of Daredevil. He did Into the Ring in Season 1 and Cut Man. He did Bang and Dogs to a Gunfight in Season 2. Also directed an episode of Luke Cage, Soliloquy of Chaos. And the episode was written by Sam Ernst. We talked about Sam Ernst earlier on in the season. He wrote episode 309, one of the best episodes this season so far, Revelations, with the showrunner Eric Olson.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, a lot of Marvel Netflix history here with these two, especially with the director Phil Abraham. Yeah, a long list there with Daredevil and Luke Cage.
Mm-hmm. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. Wilson Fisk is reunited with Vanessa, but the long-awaited reunion doesn't go entirely as planned. Not only is Ray Nadeem alive and in the wind, but with time apart, a distance has seemingly built up between Fisk and Vanessa. As Fisk tries to understand what's wrong, Vanessa reveals her true commitment to Wilson and convinces him to let her into the criminal side of his life. Meanwhile, Matt Murdock agrees to carry out Foggy's plan, working together as lawyers. And so, Nelson and Murdock, avocados at law, take on a new client who holds key information on the Kingpin. As they build their case, they make a deal with Blake Tower to get Ray Nadeem in front of a grand jury. But as they battle successfully to protect him from Fisk's hit squads, the war is lost, as Fisk takes control of the jury and he is protected from indictment, and the hearing has no effect. In the aftermath of injustice, Nadeem loses everything. Fisk is emboldened, and Matt Murdock realizes the law is no longer enough.
Yes, we see a return to form of the Avocados of Law in this episode.
It was really nice, that, wasn't it, actually?
Yeah, it was. But then, literally at the end, we then see, well, Daredevil needs to kick ass again, because working within the law sometimes doesn't work.
No. Yeah, it was really good to see both Nelson and Murdock getting together. Again, a few more smiles on the face of Matt Murdock, but then ultimately, yes, he realizes that despite giving it one last shot, he really has to try a different route. I presume he's moving back into killing Daredevil or killing Matt Murdock, rather than sort of lawyer Matt Murdock. Yes. I presume.
Yeah. Definitely enjoyed seeing Foggy talking about the gang being back together throughout this episode. Really good fun. I loved that everybody was kind of shushing him so he didn't ruin it all. So it was really good fun.
Don't say it again. Don't say, he said.
Isn't it great to be working back? Shut up, Foggy.
Yeah.
Said it too much.
Yeah. Speaks too soon. But with that, on to case note number 1 of our top 5. Yes, number 1, Vanessa returns, and she's a little bit different. She's maybe a little angry, a little distant, despite being closer to Wilson Fisk. She arrives in a helicopter, just the way she left, and obviously Fisk seems to just get bad information right at the moment that the love of his life returns to New York. But there is this kind of weird feeling between the two of them over the course of this episode, that something's not quite right. There was that moment just after, I think, Wilson Fisk had made her the omelette and she was sat down after she had woken up, where I was thinking, is she going to leave him here? Is that what's going to happen? But ultimately, no. She gets closer, much closer, that, to the point of being absolutely in the inner circle of Wilson Fisk's life. A fully fledged Fiskinette, I suppose.
Fiskinette, I like that one. She's a Fisk cheerleader.
Yes,
but no,
exactly.
This was really weird. I as soon as she came back into his life, and then after she kind of goes to bed without dinner, I was like, oh, she's had an affair. Because then there was this beautiful scene where Fisk makes his omelettes.
It's his omelette, yes. It's his famous dish, the best dish and only dish that Fisk ever cooks, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's cooked it right away from season 1. In prison, he was cooking it. Yeah. So.
But she talks about being alone. Always alone, but surrounded by bodyguards. Always alone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, she had an affair with one of the bodyguards. He's gonna snap and go crazy. She'll tell him. And then I was like, oh no, okay, so it wasn't that. Never mind. I was just like, I was like, why is she acting so strange? Obviously, we find out later why.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was expecting a bit of a kind of craziness, like a proper crazy story versus her wanting to join the family.
Yeah, I think what we saw back in season 1 of Daredevil was that she did join Wilson Fisk. She went right to his side before he made the engagement offer to her of a ring, before she left on the helicopter at the end of season 1. She very much joined Wilson Fisk. She was completely on his side. She knew what he was doing and accepted him for that. She talks to him throughout this episode and is saying to him, let me in. I want to be closer to you. I can't just be another possession of yours. I can't just sit here. I love some of the turns of phrase she has with him. We see that Dex has gone out and picked up Rabbit in a Snowstorm, the painting, and brought it back home. And Vanessa's going, Fisk likes to put beautiful things on display, effectively just like her. So we see that she has this resentment for him because she feels like he's been in prison and he put her in her own prison while he wasn't able to be around her, which I can understand the resentment from her. She's very much been alone for the entire time that he's been in prison, waiting for him to get out, and now her life can start again, is the way that she's been told from Fisk, but he's not willing to let her back into the world that he operates in, it's just an interesting kind of dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah, I think that moment where she talks about being in Spain and she's walking around, the town that she's in. There's this huge crowd, but that she feels ultimately very alone. And as you say, that they're both in their own types of prison. And that Vanessa really, to break out of this prison, needs to be let in fully to Wilson Fisk's life. That, she is seeing these men come in to have these quiet words with Wilson Fisk. She sees the blood on the rabbit in a snowstorm that Dex has recovered from Mrs. Falb, who, taken at force, she spots the kind of the splatter of blood around the frame. But ultimately, she wants to enter into his world. She doesn't want to just simply admire it from afar. I like how she references back to their moments in season 1, as you say, that this feels right to me. The fact that she stood by him and was willing to get whisked away at the end of season 1 by helicopter. She was a part of his life, or so she thought, but then there's this kind of disconnect when she gets back and the sense of loneliness and separation. And it's really nice then that, you see, Wilson Fisk fully embracing her into his little command center with Felix Manning, Mrs. Shelby looking petrified as usual. So really, really nice, I thought. I kind of liked, where he puts his hand, I think on her shoulder or maybe on the back of the chair, and he looks on with pride as she kind of suggests an alternative strategy that they need to employ against Ray Nadeem here. So, interesting stuff, I thought.
For me, it was just crazy. I wasn't expecting the end product there of her sitting in that chair and her suggesting the death of Nadeem, versus the compassionate, more, well, we'll use him later on type of
Yeah,
approach.
I think it's the two different approaches, really, isn't it? With Kingpin, it's more of a punishment. He's looking to really punish Nadeem and hang him out to dry for his betrayal. It's almost as a sign and a warning post for the rest of the FBI not to flip on Fisk, whereas Vanessa is willing to kill him and take him out completely. Another thing I love, I know you slightly mentioned it, John, earlier on, just this kind of beat that is used throughout this episode of Wilson Fisk getting bad information from people as he's trying to enjoy this moment. This is the moment he's been waiting for since he got out of prison, was getting his life back in order so that he can get Vanessa back into the country and back into his arms. And just as he's standing waiting for the helicopter to land, a guy comes up and taps him on the shoulder and goes, sir, I need to tell you some bad information. And Fisk is like, not right now. He goes, Nadeem got away, and you can see the anger is rising in him. But he pushes it away and gets Vanessa back to the apartment. And when he gets her back to his penthouse apartment, Dex is standing outside waiting to tell him more bad news. And we also have Felix coming to him while he's trying to enjoy his first day with Vanessa, and Felix is coming to tell him some more bad news about Dex getting away. I just like these moments where Fisk is trying to run his organization and trying to keep it away from Vanessa, but people keep interrupting him to tell him this bad news while she's around. So really, the chance to have her involved in the organization will actually help him out quite a lot, because he doesn't have to push everybody away all the time. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think moving on to case note 2 here, because part of that bad news is that he cannot find Ray Nadeem. We have Nadeem in hiding here, as they bring Ray to Mahoney's grandmother house initially to protect him and to take him off the streets, take him off the grid that Wilson Fisk has around New York, and then ultimately back together at Fogwell's gym, where they're going to interview Ray Nadeem to find out all the information that he knows about Wilson Fisk and how he has infiltrated the FBI. It was great seeing Mahoney's mother, I think, and the house there, and her getting involved, certainly really putting her neck out for her son, Detective Mahoney, and of course for the avocados at law. But really, this is an interesting moment where they sit down. I thought Matt was really harsh on Ray. He's going, what are you doing this for? You should have told on Wilson Fisk the moment that, you saw an officer shot, and that there's so many different complications here. And ultimately, Matt is trying to extract from Ray Nadeem that he wants to be on the right side of the law again, that he wants to redeem himself and be the good cop, effectively, or the good FBI agent. So I really like this, because it was very, very harsh, I think, line of approach that Matt Murdock took here against Ray. But then ultimately, I think Matt realizes that Ray is absolutely genuine here. So I thought this was really nice, actually.
Yeah, so I didn't agree with Matt's method. I really didn't. You can see what he was trying to do, very much so. Like, he was trying to push Nadeem into understanding why he was doing this, and push him to be more malleable to the overall offer of doing it. Because you could still see him, he was still a bit torn of, like, he didn't know why. He was going to turn, but he didn't know why. It was only for the wife and kids. But this kind of, it goes beyond that.
I think what we saw in the last couple of episodes was that Matt was saying to Foggy he'll follow Foggy's point of view and join up with Karen and Foggy and meet with them in the middle and go back to working together, and won't question their methods. But that doesn't mean he won't question Ray. Yeah. That doesn't mean he's not going to decide whether to go with their approach by forcing Ray down this path. And if Ray isn't willing to give up the information, if Ray isn't willing to really put himself on the line here, Matt will still go back out as Daredevil and kill Fisk. It feels like, yes, okay, Foggy, we'll take your approach, but if your approach isn't going to work for me, I'll still go down the path of Daredevil. That's what it kind of feels like, and that's why he pushes him the way he does. And also, to be honest, Ray's going to be questioned by multiple people about his statement over and over again. What Matt is trying to do is push him to a point where he gets the real answer out of him before Black Terror walks in, and it is literally the moment when Ray accepts that he will have to give up his entire life and give up everything to take down Fisk is just as Blake Tower arrives.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting. So
It's almost like it was timed.
yeah, it's like as if Matt was listening for Blake Tower's arrival to make sure he gets the full answer out of him.
Or it was just really good TV writing. Because it could be worse. It's like, we're going to have this big argument. Now we're going to sit here in silence for 30 seconds. Oh no, okay, actually no, they haven't got out of the car. Oh no, Blake forgot his wallet, so he's gone back to the car now. So just wait. So just sitting in silence for like 2 minutes.
But it's great to see them all working together again. And it's great to see that moment between Nelson and Murdoch as well, where Matt's kind of joking about the fact that Foggy's got, brand new suit, brand new shoes. He must have gotten used to all the money. And, Foggy turns around to him and says, but I'd be willing to give it all up if we got back together and started working together again as the attorneys. We heard him earlier on in the season talking to his brother saying all the ideas were Matt's. I was just the lawyer guy, but Matt and myself working together is what my real dream was, so it's nice to see that they hopefully will get back together again properly.
Yeah, it's nice to see it, I think. And it's a shame that at the end of the episode, Matt is kind of resolutely back in killbot mode rather than lawyer mode, because I think it would be nice to see them together doing this thing. I like the idea that Nelson would give it up, but, maybe do a bit of rich man's work on the side just to keep the dosh flowing in so that you can do pro bono on people that maybe can't afford the legal system in New York. And I think that would be really good. And then Matt Murdock could take it beyond the law at night in his Daredevil suit, taking out the Wilson Fisks, the Bullseyes, and so on. So hopefully he's not totally like sort of dichotomous here, where he's like, no, can't do law because the only thing to do is kill. But I think that's kind of how it comes across a bit here. Certainly, just because this has become so personal for him.
Yeah, I think his battle with Fisk has become that personal that he knows the law won't work. And he believes the law won't work despite what Foggy told him. Foggy's still intensely pushing it towards the end of the episode. He's still saying, we'll have another go at him. But we hear from Blake Tower in these scenes, that Foggy's called in his only card just to get an hour of Blake Tower's time. That's not going to happen again, is the way it seems to come across. And by the end of this episode, we see that Matt has accepted that is the last time that Fisk will go up against the law. So I mentioned last episode that I thought this is how the series would end, with this court case and Fisk going back to prison. I'm kind of now saying that we might be ending the season with the loss of Wilson Fisk.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. That's where I'm thinking it's going now. They've had their chance. Everything's been on the table. We had a grand jury called, short notice. We had the press called, which we'll talk about as well in our next point. But that's all happened now, and nothing came from it because Wilson Fisk has everybody in his pocket.
I don't know. I don't know if that will work, dude. I don't know if that's going to be the answer, that having Matt commit the ultimate mortal sin will be the way that they want to end on season 3.
It's what the whole series has been about, so I think that might come down to a choice.
Exactly. But I think it would be it will come down to that choice, and I don't think he will. I think what we'll find is potentially, okay, so here's the pitch. Poindexter kills Vanessa.
Okay.
While trying to beat the hell out of Matt. And most likely Daredevil beats down Poindexter, and then Wilson Fisk goes into range after finding, and Daredevil has to beat him to a pulp. And it comes to the point then it's like, no, you need to get out of this race or I will kill you. Like I killed, and he'll say that he killed Vanessa. I don't know. But I don't think Vanessa's long for this world.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, for me, I definitely thought, it'll come down to that choice as to whether Daredevil will kill Wilson Fisk or not. I kind of thought he might do, but I know that the character, that's kind of one of those things that he's fundamentally opposed to ultimately in the comics, so they'd probably pull away from that. But I think it could get messy in the whole run into the end, and of course it is only one episode left. I just feel that this may potentially get a little messy, and I don't mean in a bad way. I just mean that there's a lot of strings here that may play out. I think, will Poindexter find out that Felix Manning killed Julie? Is there, as you say, potentially Bullseye miscalculates and kills Vanessa. Is Vanessa going to be this linchpin and Wilson Fisk back in prison? However unlikely that feels at the moment. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of pieces on the chessboard still really here. And I'm not entirely sure whether they're doing a knight move, a bishop move, or some kind of random queen move here.
I think that the move is going to be that the chessboard is flipped off the table.
Yeah.
And I feel that this is down to Ray as well. I think, I know you guys feel that there's another move to happen for Dex here, but I think Vanessa has sent him to kill Ray, and I think Ray had a plan. We'll probably follow up that on a later point, because let's get into our case note number 3, the Parkway shootout. The big action moment, really, of this episode, where Matt is trying to bring Ray Nadeem to the courthouse. Thought this was a really, really interesting scene.
Yeah.
Because we talked about Matt's superpowers this season earlier on, that they're not really being shown off the way they were in season 1, where we had it really underlined. This is Matt using his superpowers. But wow, this episode really does show off how good Matt is with his abilities.
Yeah, this Parkway shootout was excellent. Really good. And yes, he might not kill, but he certainly kills by proxy, using Ray Nadeem to shoot through the back of the van. Like, that was really cool, I thought, where he's kind of saying, shoot Nadeem, because they're reloading. Like, he's really frantic, and he has them taken out. Maybe it is just a wounding rather than a killing, possibly.
No, it is 100%. And when they get out of the car earlier on, you see the 3 guys that Ray has shot, with the guidance of Matt. You see the 3 of them rolling on the ground with shots to their legs. Matt has made him aim downwards through the spots that the shots came through. It's so interesting. I love that style that's there. I will say there's a couple of things that happen in the scene, whether it's just that they edited it slightly shorter than it needed to be. But there's a couple of moments in the scene where Matt doesn't give enough information to Ray for him to take out the people that he takes out. It's like Ray also has a bit of a superpower as well. He seems to be way too good at taking out everybody around him. But I did like the scene. It's an exciting and interesting scene, definitely.
Yeah, really good. I do like the fact as well that it counterbalances with, you're wanting them to succeed because this is the journey of Ray Nadeem to the courthouse to give his evidence to the grand jury. And ultimately they win this battle. But, as we come to later, the war is very far from won here. And I think that's kind of a nice element to this Parkway shootout. It's a small victory in amongst that war, and ultimately it's a little Pyrrhic in a sense. So like really, really good. I do like the fact as well that Felix is behind this attack on Ray Nadeem, and we have this moment right at the start where he offers his resignation. I think you said at the time, Derek, I don't think there's many people that could offer their resignation to Wilson Fisk, but you do see that Fisk is very grateful for his protection of Vanessa during those 2 years away.
Specifically because Felix introduces this conversation with Fisk by saying that the men who were sent to kill Ray Nadeem failed and they've all been taken care of. So he's specifically starting this whole conversation with Fisk saying, I've just killed all those people that failed in that mission that I gave them. I can hand you my resignation and leave right now. It's not very many people that get the opportunity to do that at all.
So I find it really interesting on this action quote unquote scene. I really enjoyed it. And that, because the quote unquote is about Matt is seen as Matt wrestling, slamming a bad guy twice his size into a car by a woman in the car. I'm like, and then he just picks up the blind man approach again. I'm like, oh, Maddie. Secret identity here. You can't have both ways, which I think is going to come back to haunt him at some point.
Well, the post that I put up on our Facebook group for this particular episode was Matt with his I'm Not Daredevil t-shirt. Because firstly, he does pick up his red t-shirt and puts it on at the beginning of the episode, or at the end of the last episode, feeding into this one. He puts his red t-shirt on, which is the famous one that has the I'm Not Daredevil on it. There is definitely that moment where the woman is in the car changing the radio channel or listening to the radio as a person slams into the front of her car, smashing the glass, and she does look out the window seeing this blind guy pick up his cane and walking on. Yeah, so I don't know whether it's completely busting who he is, but certainly it's showing that this guy is not your average blind guy who doesn't know what's going on. Definitely. Yeah.
He's almost like a man who uses echolocation to know where everything is. And if he was going to become a superhero, what would you call him? Batman? Man that uses echolocate. Anyway, moving on. I still think that's the weird one. You should call Daredevil Batman and Batman Daredevil because that's more what they are. But anyway.
Maybe, but I do like how the scene ends with them getting into the cab. I like that Matt is standing at the back of the cab and goes, oh no, it's not a cab. And the reason for that is because the last time he got a cab in New York, he ended up at the bottom of the Hudson. So understandable why he doesn't want to get into a cab.
Yeah.
And the gag with Ray Nadeem saying, but I'll drive, is also hilarious. Exactly. After everything they've gone through, Ray still is kind of going, yeah, but you still can't drive the cab, you know.
It was fun. It was just a bit strange. I don't know, like, they showed off his powers quite well. In terms of the point here, wait, go, wait, there's two guys coming, etc. But I would have liked to see, like, if he had just thrown on the mask and then went full Daredevil, but he was just running in between, or sorry, full Men in Black, if you want. But he was in this in-between phase, which I don't know, it just didn't resonate as much with me. But it was still cool. Like, I'm not taking away from that at all. It was still cool. It was just, I think it didn't resonate as much as I wanted it to.
It's interesting you say that, because I must say I didn't clock that he was ultimately exposed as Matt Murdock here, showing off his skill set. So that's kind of interesting. And, I missed that totally. I didn't really think about it along those lines, but certainly, given all the cameras that Wilson Fisk seems to have at his disposal, you're kind of thinking, it's going to get caught on some kind of traffic cam on the parkway. And maybe it'll feed into something. So, that's really interesting actually, to see how that plays out. But ultimately, case note number 4, the deposition and press conference here. The final destination of Matt Murdock and Ray Nadeem is to the grand jury in the courts. Again, this is another really interesting moment where Karen goes off to effectively at the same time as what's going on behind the closed doors. She goes public with what's happening in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Don't know how that would go down by the judge, but I like how there is this huge glimmer of optimism between the group that they have this moment where the truth has come out about Wilson Fisk in front of a grand jury. Karen is doing her public message with Allison outside the courtroom, and there's a real nice moment where it's all smiles, positivity, and as I say, the war is lost in effect as Matt tunes into what's going on behind the closed doors of the courtroom to hear that Wilson Fisk has been also getting to know the grand jury a little more intimately than Matt Murdock would have liked.
I wish they hadn't got the jury at that point. I'd like to have seen Nadeem in there. I'd like to have seen a courtroom. I think I talked about this at the very beginning of the season or early on, saying that I wanted to see the Matt Foggy courtroom scene where they were actually in the courtroom arguing, doing an opening, doing a closing, something along those lines. So I was hoping that the fact that they, within 15 minutes, they were standing outside and then we get a cocked ear and the jury being bought or threatened.
One member of the jury knows the addresses of every other member of the jury. And that is the threat, is that I know exactly who every single person here is. It's a great moment, and really far-reaching tentacles of Wilson Fisk are exposed once again in this episode. Really liked it. And I loved how quickly this happened, because it was almost like that moment where it was like, high fives, everyone. Everyone's going to be happy. Yeah. Ray, what I heard from you was a man standing up for truth, justice, and the American... Oh, actually, hang on a second. What I hear from the courtroom is the jurors have all been bought. Sorry, Ray. We might have to do this again in the future. You know, it's a really interesting twist. The one thing I didn't like about this moment is we don't hear anything of what Karen actually says to the press. We hear her walking up to the press going, Karen Page wants to make a statement. And we see the aftermath of it when the grand jury has said that they're throwing out the testimony of Ray, which is now going to be sealed and no one will ever hear the actual testimony. And the press go to Karen, oh, well, you were just lying to us to protect the bulletin and trying to up the ratings of the bulletin. But what did she actually say? Did she tell them that Agent Poindexter was Daredevil? Did she tell them that he's the one that attacked the bulletin? Did she tell them that Ray Nadeem was the one on the stand? Because you hear somebody asking the question, who is it? Do you know the person that's on the stand? Do you know who it is? And she doesn't seem to tell them that. So what actually did she say in her statement?
Yeah.
Will it come back in the next episode? Will we actually get some of the press publishing the information, or will everybody just not publish it at all because the court case didn't go through? I'm presuming that's what's happened. But I'm not sure if the scene really worked for Karen, because it was supposed to be the third prong of the plan with Nelson, Murdoch and Paige getting back together. She has the press that she's able to talk to and give a statement to, but I don't know what her statement was, so it didn't seem to make sense in the episode. It felt like it was just something for Karen Page to do. If she'd actually made a statement about something to the press that actually made sense and they published it, and it wasn't just hanging on what was happening in the courtroom, maybe it would have worked as a plan. But it feels like whatever it was she told to the press wasn't meaningful enough.
Yeah, I mean, she said that Wilson Fisk had tried to kill her, and I think she mentioned Poindexter, and that was it, because there is that moment where it pans out and Poindexter is watching the screen. So,
but she says that to Ellison before she's talking to the press, and that's what I'm wondering about. They ask her a few questions and the camera pans away and we don't actually see what she says until they say afterwards, you were just lying to us, Karen, to boost the ratings of the bulletin.
Yeah. So she still say that there was a kid, the person was in the FBI. So she lands it on the FBI, but she doesn't. I don't think she names Poindexter. So the way I inferred this was, she said as much as she could without the grand jury indicting the grand jury's testimony, kind of thing. Because there's certain things you can't say outside of a grand jury.
Of course. Yeah.
So she kind of said enough, and then was like, okay, but when they release the transcripts and parts of the grand jury, you'll get all the rest of the information.
yeah, and I mean, I think as well, there's a really good point made by Blake Tower earlier in the episode that, you know, Nadeem's lawyers in Nelson and Murdoch have huge conflicts of interest here, in relation to Wilson Fisk and with other things to do with this. Do you really want them as your lawyer? So again, I mean, there is also that point of whether they're the right lawyers to have taken this. They are in Ray Nadeem's eyes, and they are in their eyes because they don't necessarily trust anyone else to take it and follow it through. However, you know, that could be one of those things that undermines their case. And again, similarly with Karen Page doing this public thing, she has to be very careful about what she says. And it seems as though then the other press people are looking on it really skeptically now that it's been thrown out, because they don't know the jury has been threatened in this way. So for them now, there's multiple pieces making it appear as though the bulletin is out satisfying itself, self-promoting, and that Nelson and Murdoch then have really not been able to persuade the jury to indict Wilson Fisk. So it leaves them in a really precarious position here. And I do like the fact that Ray Nadeem sort of wriggles loose from the custody, from the safety of Murdoch and Nelson. I think, you know, Matt Murdoch is massively annoyed and heads off, but ultimately Nadeem heads back then to his home after this.
Not before knocking out Foggy Nelson as well.
That's true.
You know, he gives him a punch across the face and knocks him out. Like, that's pretty harsh for poor old Foggy. What a way to repay your lawyer.
Yeah.
There's obviously a larger allegory here regarding kind of, so who is the bulletin supposed to be?
It's supposed to be the left-wing press versus Trump, as we mentioned last episode, that Fisk is supposed to be Trump. They've absolutely underlined it this season, and this is supposed to be, the free press is supposed to be the bulletin, people that will take that opportunity to go against the big guy.
Right, yeah. It is that, because where the rest of the journalists are turning on Karen and calling her a liar and, oh, you're just out to get him and all that, that seemed... That was a particular scene that I'm like, oh, okay, you're hitting me over in the face with the subtlety, if you want to call it that.
Yes, it's the Fox News fake news idea, yeah.
But then this does bring us on to our finale setup, really, and our case note 5. We have Nadeem losing everything here. After knocking out Foggy at the courtroom, he heads back to his house, which is now a crime scene. We've had these really nice moments where he's been effectively absolutely torn to shreds by his wife saying, you weren't supposed to lie to me, and you brought a firefight to our home. And he goes back there and it's empty. He's had that conversation with his child Sammy about you're going to hear bad things that I've done. I haven't done them, but I didn't stop them. He records his message then, all those memories of him and his family there as he records this message to them. And I think it's really interesting here that there are cameras around Ray Nadim's house, and I think that moment where he's outside drinking by the big hole where the swimming pool was supposed to be, as Dex arrives to carry out Vanessa's wishes, that he refuses to move somewhere where he can be killed off quietly. And I'm like going, has he pointed one of his security cameras in that direction? Does he have something with his phone, like he's recording? What's he doing? I feel there's a plan here from Ray Nadim, that he is being a sacrificial lamb, but that this sacrifice will have some meaning. He knows he's going to get killed, but he knows that he is able to make it into a meaningful sacrifice of himself and the loss of his family. He wants to make it up to Sammy, his son, to his wife, but also to his own character, it seems. So I think there's something here that, has blindsided Poindexter. And I really like the fact that maybe ultimately with Vanessa's first decision, which overturns Wilson Fisk's, and Felix Manning's about keeping Nadim alive, she overturns that ultimately may be the downfall of Wilson Fisk.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I'm there. Nadim he's too smart just to go to the ground without having something. And it was just like he knew where the cameras were. He was looking, and he was very insistent about not leaving the back garden.
Yeah, he says to Dex, I'm not going to make it easy for you by going in undercover yet. Definitely get that bit. I definitely think the video message being recorded just beforehand is going, look how easy it is in our world today to have video cameras. Just remember that point. Watchers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember that point, fellow defenders. This will come back in the future, but is it just the next door neighbor is filming? Is that why the light goes on just after Ray's been killed? Has he set something up? I just don't know, but it does feel like Ray would have more of a plan than just to stand there and take it. He feels like he wants to go out the hero.
Yeah.
So what is his plan? I'm really interested to find out.
Yeah, he's sacrificed everything. He might as well make it meaningful,
yeah.
And have a purpose. It's a really good send-off, I think, for this character, assuming that is what plays out in the next episode.
Yeah.
Ultimately, because he ultimately has become more and more important over the course of this series. He has been, to some extent, that plot device at the start, but ultimately has been interwoven really nicely into the fabric of this series. And I've really enjoyed his role in the different relationships between both him and Poindexter, but the FBI and Wilson Fisk, all these different mashups and different scenarios that Ray Nadim finds himself in, even with his superior, Special Agent Hatley, as they kill Agent Wynn. It's just a real great character for driving how Wilson Fisk is so dodge and where his influence lies, and how that affects different relationships. So I think this is an honourable send-off for Special Agent Ray Nadim.
It's sad to see him gone, yeah. He's interacted with every single character throughout the show. We even hear when Blake Terra comes in and is introduced to him, he goes, I know him. Everybody knows this character. He's kind of the central character outside of Daredevil in the show. He's been in every episode and has had interactions with every other character. So sad that he's gone, but I'm hopeful that the sacrifice is meaningful in the last episode. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where this goes. Like I said earlier in this episode, I kind of have an idea where this is going to go in terms of the very end, i.e. Vanessa dying, Poindexter being the cause. But my vision is cloudy, if you will.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, Chris, I'm not sure at all about Dex being involved in Vanessa's death, that whole idea seems kind of out the window to me, to be honest. I think what they're setting up in this finale for it is that Vanessa is the one in the chair controlling everything. If Wilson goes back to prison, Vanessa's right there. She's still in control and still in the background. They've sent Dex off to kill Ray. If he's got video footage of Dex, well, then Dex goes down. Dex goes to prison as well, or is killed by the FBI. I don't think his story is going to be... I don't think we have enough in one last episode for him to build up a beef against Vanessa and kill her. I don't think there's enough time left in this season of the show, to be honest. I kind of feel like this is the last big move from Dex, and he'll be either killed or be in prison by the end of episode 13.
Or I think for me, that he will be Vanessa's right-hand man, because I feel as though that moment where he says, I'm the new James Wesley, if you will, and he goes to get the painting and he has that conversation with her, it feels as though he's making a connection there. He knows it's the way to Wilson Fisk's heart, his big pounding omelette-ridden heart. And, there is that moment where he kind of maybe feels slightly shunned by Wilson Fisk. Wilson Fisk is really just telling him, like, just calm down, you're not doing anything. I've put too much on you. And that's kind of why you may have failed in killing Karen, Daredevil, and so on. So I just wonder if it is that Wilson Fisk goes to prison and Dex is the right-hand man for Vanessa, who takes up the mantle. But ultimately, it will be Vanessa's fault for reversing the decision of Wilson Fisk to actually just frame Nadeem for the murder of Agent Wynn and to have the FBI go against him and just actually to soul destroy him, to crush him mentally, professionally, and just emotionally. That is probably where he should have been, as opposed to murdered, because who knows what he has managed to capture from that meeting. If anything, it's a theory. Let's see how it plays.
And I feel like the choice of Vanessa to send Dex to kill Ray without the Daredevil costume is the whole plan. It is send his ex-partner to go and shoot him in his back garden, and he will be the one that will take the fall for the death of Nadeem, remember that conversation between Vanessa and Wilson Fisk, where Vanessa goes, he called himself the new James Wesley.
Yes.
Wilson Fisk went, he's not anything like the new James Wesley. He's just a tool that's useful.
Yeah, I like that as well. Okay, so we can't have both ways, but I like both of them. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, no, I like that how dare he call himself James Wesley? He was my only friend that I let close to, and he is not there yet, and that this ultimately provides a route for them to get rid of Poindexter, where the blame is on Nadeem for doing what he does rather than on them. Okay, yeah.
And remember, the fact that Dex brought back Rabbit in a Snowstorm after clearly killing the one person that Wilson Fisk has been merciful to possibly in his life, probably didn't sit very well with Wilson Fisk either. So possibly they're setting him up for the fall, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I can see that. But Dex is being stupid. Why, leave blood evidence on a white frame, on a white painting, and you did the stain of blood? I was like, come on.
I don't know whether stupid's the right word, Chris. I think you mentioned it last episode, about this pressing stress that's been on Dex as things start to go out of control for him. We see it at the beginning of the episode, the moment where he's standing waiting for Fisk to arrive, and you hear that rising of the flies motif that's been going on since last episode. You hear it rising in his brain as he's trying to apologize to Wilson Fisk, and is not given the opportunity to do that either for a full day. He's left to just stew in his juices about failing Wilson Fisk, and when he apologizes to Wilson Fisk, he's told, well, actually, you're on the outs now. You haven't done the things that I wanted you to do, and maybe it's because I'm putting too much pressure on you. I don't think he's stupid. I think everything's spiraling out of control for this character, and he's doing everything he can to grab on to control, like he has many times throughout this season, but it's all lost to him now, and I think this is why Wilson Fisk is throwing him to the wolves, in a way, is because this is not a character in control. This is not someone you can have around and on the interior of your business. He's too much of a loose cannon.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of loose cannons, we do have Matt leaving the trio of Karen, Foggy, and Matt Murdock, and he is done with the law. What's he going to do? Turn and take down Fisk, kill him, maim him, brutalize him? You know, what's happening here? In a sense, from that trio, he's become that loose cannon as well. I do love the fact that we see Nelson and Karen kind of just sitting there, almost helpless, you know, that their friend has gone off again and it hasn't worked the way Foggy thought it might do. And ultimately, have they lost him again? And that's their overriding kind of feeling and the look of sadness on their face. I think it's just really well done.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's some really interesting moments throughout this episode. We hear that conversation with Ray, where Ray's going, you know, you walk that line between dark and light all the time. I stepped off into the dark side for a week and my entire life fell apart. How do you keep your friends close? How did they stay with you? And Matt goes, it's not me. I do nothing to keep them close. They stick by me. They're the ones that choose to be right beside me. And what we have is Matt has made the choice to stick by them until it all doesn't work out. And they've lost their opportunity with Matt in a way. He may come back to them at the end of the season, as I said earlier on, when this whole thing with Wilson Fisk is done. He may come back and join back up with them again. But he went with them. He did everything they wanted to do. He took their plan. He didn't say anything about Karen going to the press. He took Foggy up on his offer to bring in a grand jury and put Ray in front of them. He did all of that. Didn't use this as cover for Daredevil to go and take down Fisk, you know, but none of it worked out. It's all failed now.
Yeah.
So Matt's going to put back on that mask again and go after Fisk, I believe. Anyway.
I think so.
I think so too, gentlemen. It's very interesting to see that we're going into the 13th episode of this season and there's so much to be closed off. So much. Like even when we had, if we say Luke Cage, by the end of episode 12, we kind of knew where everything was and everything was going to stand. We got some nice twists at the end of the episode. But this one is a lot bigger. Everything's still up for grabs in this episode.
It feels like all their plans have failed.
Yes,
by the end of this episode. Yeah. I think the only plan really is how does Matt take down Fisk? And we know from a previous episode he can't get back into that hotel because they know how to block him from getting in this time. So they've upped security. So how does he get back at getting Fisk? So it'll be really interesting to see how they deal with that in the next episode.
Okay.
That seems to be the end of our top 5 points. Chris, do you have any notes on the episode?
I do. There was a beautiful Easter egg, and it's the epitome of an Easter egg in this episode. In Fogwell's gym, behind Karen and behind Matt at one point, you see a red poster, which says Morales versus Parker.
Nice.
So this is a Spider-Man's reference for all of our non-Spider-Man fans. Miles Morales is the new Spider-Man, or one of them, and Peter Parker is obviously Peter Parker. It was a nice nod, Easter egg to, which potentially could be, you say, into the Spider-Verse, an animated film, which hopefully you've all checked out the trailers for. But I think this is more of a nice nod.
Yeah, this is a good spot, actually, Chris. You are on fine Easter egg form as we move into the Christmas season.
I do like my Easter eggs at Christmas. Discounted chocolate. Do you guys have any Easter eggs for this episode? Any notes?
No, not for me.
No other notes from me?
Okay, so with that's all of our notes for this episode. So to finish this episode off, Derek, do you defend this episode of Daredevil Season 3, Episode 12, One Last Shot?
I definitely defend this episode. I think this is a great penultimate episode because it leaves you at a point where you don't know what's going to happen. That's always good. And we had the opportunity to see Nelson and Murdoch back together again. We had the opportunity to see Karen working with the press and doing her thing. Really good to see that. Really sad loss that we've seen Ray Nadeem gone. I really enjoyed his character this season and loved his arc. I'm hoping it's going to pay off in the final episode. But yeah, absolutely enjoyed this episode of Daredevil. Chris, do you defend this episode of Daredevil Season 3, Episode 12, One Last Shot?
I do defend this episode. As I said, there was a few things that potentially I was just like, I just don't get it. Why this choice? But again, these usually, when we have these types of episodes, I'm usually at a point where at the end of the next episode, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get why you did it this way or this way. It's setting up a lot for episode 13, which is always a good sign. I just hope we don't get left on a cliffhanger again. Like, knowing Matt is dead. He's dead, but he's actually alive. Oh no. I don't want that. I want resolution in this season. Especially with the fate of Daredevil season 4, up in the air. So I don't want a to be continued. So let's see where we get. We have 1 hour left with these characters, and I wouldn't want to get into it very quickly. So that's all I have to say. Yes, I defend this episode. John, do you defend Daredevil season 3 episode 12? One last shot.
Yes, I do defend the penultimate episode of Daredevil. I give it 4 swimming pool floaters out of 5. I really did enjoy this.
That took me a minute. That's about Rain Redeem, isn't
it? It is, yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't float because there was no water, and actually the swimming pool wasn't finished. But certainly, yes, if it had been, and if his construction schedule had run on time, and it would have been better if he'd been floating on a nice big lilo with a cocktail with his family jumping in as well. But unfortunately, in that sense, he would have been just face down and dead. Yes. But I do defend this episode. I really like seeing Vanessa back. I like that it kind of stayed a little suspect for a while between her and Wilson Fisk. I also was very much on edge all the way through this, expecting a Poindexter move, especially when Ray Nadeem was back at his home. I was just expecting to hear like this little smash of glass as, I don't know, a marble came through the window and hit him square in the head, and he died. I wasn't expecting it to be so face to face actually between Poindexter and Nadeem in the back garden. I like then that all came from Vanessa, and again, just to see what happens here. Is it to take down Poindexter, put that blame on him, or what is going to happen now that Matt has left the trio, the happy trio that was so happy, smiley, positive in the courtroom until they realized that despite all their best efforts, Wilson Fisk has got a way bigger wallet than any of them ever have, or indeed a way bigger arsenal of guns, henchmen, and Felix Mannings than they have. So this was really good, and it definitely sets up for the final episode to really see who comes out on top here. I think I agree. I mean, whilst I definitely want there to be a follow-up as such, I really hope there's some kind of happy resolution for Matt Murdock, because I've enjoyed seeing happy Matt back on screen. I hope it's not just kind of left on a cliffhanger, as you say, Chris. But yeah, I'm really excited now to see the final episode here of Daredevil season 4. So yes, I do defend this episode.
I don't think I got across throughout this podcast how tense this episode of Daredevil actually was watching it the first time, because we watched it a few times, as we always do for this review. Every single time that Ray Nadeem was standing outdoors, I was thinking there was a bullet going to be coming for him. There was a moment where he's just standing outside Mahoney's house, just chatting away to Matt and Foggy, and I was expecting bullet coming across the road.
Absolutely.
He's in the courthouse talking to Matt and Foggy after doing his testimony, and you're going, why are you standing in front of a window? Step away from the window, Ray. There was so much tension in this episode to do with where Ray was placed. And then, as you say, John, having him face to face with Dex at the end of the episode, and that's how he meets his demise, was actually quite an interesting choice because it was unexpected.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was really on edge, as you say. Those 3 moments: Mahoney's mum's house outside, the courtroom, and then in the house. It was just like, okay, I'm just waiting for a little smash of glass and I don't know, a paper clip to come whizzing through right between the eyes. Yeah. So on to some feedback. We have some feedback for episode 10 here from our Facebook group. You can head on over to join our group over at facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV podcast. Mike Brown says, I know that Lee Tergerson, who played Karen's dad, pops up almost constantly in these little roles, but he always will be Tobias Beecher from Oz to me. Yes, Oz, what a great show. If slightly disturbing and violent, but a fantastic show. If you haven't seen Oz and you have a strong constitution, I would definitely recommend it to you.
Definitely, yeah. Luke Ferguson is one of those actors, when you see him on screen, you always go, I know that guy from something, because he's been in so many different things over the course of his career, but absolutely Oz is probably the biggest one that he's known for.
Yes. Still on episode 10, Connor McKenna says, I like Karen in the comics. She will always hold a sweet spot for me, despite her beginnings as a vapid idiot. She grows as a character, especially after Born Again during the Nascenti run, up until her tragic death. She was also a standout in the 2 Daredevil novels I've read, one where she might even get more page time than Matt, but I do not like her on this show. I like the actress, but I guess it's just the writing. For some reason, she's always takes up heaps of screen time in Daredevil, and while it's relevant for her character, it isn't really relevant to the plot. Did we need half an hour to tell us what we pretty much already knew, that she was in a car crash where her brother died and she did heaps of drugs and felt awful about it? I did like the small town setting at least, but it went on too long. Then we have the climax of the episode straight from Guardian Devil, but predictably Karen waltzes in with her plot armor and gets other characters killed. Again, so tired of this. It was so predictable as well. I didn't enjoy the sequence, despite the fact it was straight from one of my favourite stories, because I was waiting for Karen to get either Father Lantham or Maggie killed, and lo and behold, just like Ben Urich and the newsroom, it happened. Her actions got someone else killed, albeit I will say she is less responsible here than the other 2 examples, where she tricked and brought Ben to Kingpin's mother, resulting in his death, and bringing the people to the newsroom and not a safe location. But I digress. It's just more of the same thing with her. I am tired of her scenes. She is just the same in every damn season, and she takes up so much screen time. Maybe she could have sacrificed herself for Maggie, redeeming her for all the death she causes, especially redeeming her in her mind, as this route will sure just make her hate herself even more. In this episode, I never felt suspense for Karen because she just seemed immune to death. Here's where I rustle feathers. I've read a lot of articles, and apparently you are not allowed to kill her, or it would be sexist and doing the women in fridge trope. I have many more thoughts on this, but I'm going to steer away from them until I finally burst on my own podcast, and it comes pouring out in a flood of madness, but hopefully that day is far away. Bring in Black Widow or Heather or anyone, even Gloria next season. Hopefully there is one. Damn you, Netflix. Anyway, sorry for the long email. I'm still listening to the Iron Fist coverage. Episode 6 I'm on because I'm so far behind. But in light of that cancellation, I might skip to the Daredevil coverage since I'm still miserable about it. Thank you, Connor, for the feedback. It's certainly a point of view to be had. And I think I wouldn't get too down on Karen. At the end of the day, I don't think she hogs the screen time. I think half an hour out of 3 seasons is not really hogging screen time from the main protagonist. And I certainly think that both her and Foggy in season 2 were very much sidelined for the Punisher, Elektra, and Matt Murdock. They really did have bit parts. At the end of the day, this is just simply a different way of using and writing this character. It's just that in this world, she survives those elements and those scenarios that she has not survived in the comics. But that's not mean that you have to fully and faithfully transcribe the comic books to the TV.
Yeah.
Certainly they are drawing inspiration from there. And I think that's what all the Marvel Netflix will do. They will draw on this inspiration, but they aren't necessarily bound to what Frank Miller, what Kevin Smith, and any of the earlier writers have done with Karen Page. I think stories have to move forward. They have to change up. Yes, they are doffing the cap and they are referencing and they are paying maybe some homage to those seminal moments in the history of Daredevil as a character. But if you repeat the same story again and again, these characters then do not develop. They become stale. And I think this is nice. I really enjoyed finally seeing Karen's story on the screen. Yeah. And maybe I'm less invested in the comics whilst I have read Frank Miller's, whilst I've read Kevin Smith's. personally, I don't feel that we should be beholden to them. So I do disagree with some of the elements that you've said here for sure. And I think it's great that we've seen Karen and I think Foggy get more time here with Matt Murdock to develop that trio and that relationship between these three. I think it has been really, really good to see. And ultimately, I am glad that they didn't kill her off. So, thanks very much for the feedback, but certainly it's one that I don't always agree with.
Thanks so much for sending the feedback in, Connor. To be honest with you, we know that there is a lot of dislike of the character of Karen out there. I'm a fan of the character, I really am, and to be honest with you, the fact that they've gotten to this stage where they've put this moment on screen, the moment directly from the comic books where she dies, and she isn't the one that dies, is brilliant to me, because right the way from season 1, the discussion that's always gone on is, I can't wait till she turns into a drug addict and dies. Well, that's terrible for a character, that everybody thinks that's all that's going to happen is she's going to turn into a drug addict and die, because that was 2 stories, effectively. The 2 biggest stories for Daredevil, possibly, but it's only 2 stories. I'm so glad to know that we're hopefully going to get another season of Daredevil with this character of Karen Page, and nobody knows where she's going to go, what her next move is going to be, because that means it makes her a more interesting character. Delighted that you've sent in this feedback, because again, not many people put it into words as well as you have, so I'm always interested in hearing somebody else's opinion about the characters and the show that's out there. So thanks so much for sending that in.
Yeah, thanks, Connor.
Yeah, thank you, Connor. And look, we can all agree to disagree sometimes and still appreciate the viewpoints of the other person. And that is a mature comic book audience and friends, and that's what our fellow defenders are. So, yeah, I don't agree, but thank you for sending in the feedback. So moving on to episode 12 and feedback for that episode, over on Facebook, Brianna McGill says, I really like seeing Mac back in the fold, but I also like seeing that he's still not 100% okay. Like, he's still full on rage mode yelling at people, and at the end he just pieces out to do things his way. Yes, he does, Brianna, and that's what's going to be the interesting bit. I really like, as I said, you've heard already this episode, we liked seeing Matt back in the fold. But yeah, he's going full Men in Black now.
I love that, Brianna. What a great way to describe just piecing out and going off in his own way. Excellent. Thanks, Brianna. Doug Green sent us an email a couple of weeks ago about episode 12 just to say, was I the only one that was disappointed when Foggy said Nelson and Murdoch attorneys at law, that he didn't say avocados at law? You are definitely not the only one, Doug. As you probably heard earlier on, John even included that in his opening statement, or opening argument.
Yes. My opening statement to the jury. They are avocados at law, none of this attorneys at law.
Yes, I know I normally call it your synopsis, but we should have called it opening statements from the beginning.
We really should have, actually, yeah. Well, it's never too late to change.
Speaking of which, Jamie Alexander says, yay, our avocados are back together again. Well, for a few hours anyway. I love the parallel between Ray's reason for taking Fisk's bait and Matt's dad choosing to win his fight instead of going down. I always thought Vanessa had to be a bit dark to accept a man like Fisk. Oh, but I also had the feeling that Ray was going to end up dead. Every time Matt and his friends seem to get a leg up, Fisk knocks them down a few rungs. It's delightfully infuriating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so pleased that our guacamoles are back doing their thing. It's been really good to see, actually. So a yay from me as well, Jamie and Doug, for sure.
Great point, Jamie, about Ray taking down Fisk, similar to Matt's dad choosing to win his fight instead of going down. Yeah, that's a really good point. Nice parallel.
Still on Facebook, we had feedback from Andrew Wilmot, who said, this was a really great episode. R.I.P. Nadeem, he's a great character, and Jay Ali plays him so well. His character arc ended perfectly. It sets up a fantastic finale.
Excellent stuff. Thank you, Andrew, for the feedback, and thank you everyone else for your feedback. It's really great to get your thoughts. And we just have one final episode left, which I must say I am really, really looking forward to. This has been a really good season of Daredevil. I've loved how they've kind of brought it back to that core grouping of characters that we saw in season 1 with Wilson Fisk, with Matt, Nelson, and Karen, and then obviously having the introduction of these new characters such as Ray Nadeem Poindexter, and using Ellison as well to really connect these two together, and Mahoney, of course, as well. Don't forget Mahoney. So really enjoyed this. Cannot wait till our next podcast, where we will be looking at the final episode of Daredevil Season 3, Wipes Tear Away from Eye. Yes, episode 13, A New Napkin.
That's not a spelling mistake. A New Napkin is the name of the final episode of Daredevil Season 3. Interesting to find out what the heck that means.
Yeah, or as we like to say here in Europe, a new serviette.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, fellow defenders, I think it is about time we leave because, yeah, that serviette joke was just,
just the worst, absolutely.
It was
It was really bad, yeah.
We'll be back very soon, fellow defenders. Thank you so much, as always.
Thanks so much for joining us, fellow defenders. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, as always, fellow defenders, thank you so much for joining us. It's great speaking with you, and we'll speak with you again next time. Bye.